The scent of cold iron and rotting pine bit the air, a foul taste that made Kalen's wolf snarl deep within his chest. He stood on the granite outcrop, alpha of the Frostfang pack, a silhouette of grim power against the bleeding sunset. Below him, his warriors moved through the besieged village, their growls low thunders in the twilight. The Ironwood scents were fading. The raid was over, their enemy retreating like the tide, yet victory was ash in his mouth. They had been too slow. The charnel house reek of death rose from the burnt huts. Survivors are few, Alpha. Rylan, his beta, murmured, voice gravelly with shared fury. They took most. Slaughtered the rest. Kalen's jaw tightened. A shadow movement, furtive and quick, caught his predator's eye near the tree line. Not a warrior's gait, a scavenger's. His lip curled. Not all were taken. He moved, a blur of obsidian fur and lethal grace, shifting mid-leap. His paws hit the forest floor without a sound, closing the distance in heartbeats. He erupted from the ferns, a monstrous black wolf blocking the path of the fleeing figure. It was a woman. She was covered in soot and blood that was not her own, tangled dark hair wild around a face, sharp with defiance, not fear. In her hands, she held a crude spear, its tip fashioned from an Ironwood warrior's own broken dagger. She didn't cower. She dropped into a fighting stance, her eyes a shocking, tempestuous gray like a winter storm locked on his. "Stay back!" she hissed, her voice raw but steady. A human. A human in the heart of ravaged werewolf territory. Disgust flared in him. But beneath it, something primal and impossible jolted. The air around her shimmered, not with heat, but with a peculiar, silvery pollen that seemed to fall from her hair, catching the dying light like powdered moonbeams. His wolf, a creature of absolute certainty, went utterly still inside him. Then it lunged against his ribs, not with violence, but with a claiming, possessive frenzy that stole his breath. Mate. The word was a seismic shock to his soul. It couldn't be. She was human, fragile, alien. Yet the bond, raw and new, screamed its truth in his blood, a song of destiny that felt like a betrayal. He shifted back to his human form, the transformation rippling over him in a surge of muscle and bone. He stood naked before her, a king in his raw power, scarred and towering. He saw her gaze flicker over him, not with modesty, but with a swift, assessing clarity. It infuriated him. "You trespass in a graveyard, girl," he growled, the alpha command saturating his tone. A force that made hardened warriors bow. She flinched, but her grip on the spear tightened. The strange moondust swirled a little faster around her. "This was my home. These were my people. I trespass nowhere." "Your people?" He stepped closer, the scent of her flooding him, wild thyme, cold starlight, and beneath the smoke, the unmistakable, devastating perfume of his fated mate. It was agony. "You are human. These were wolves." Her stormy eyes held his, and in their depths, he saw a sorrow as old as the mountains. "The ones who raised me were wolves. The ones who killed them were wolves." She bared her teeth, a human gesture with all the ferocity of a she-wolf. "So what does that make you, Alpha?" Before he could answer, a low, pained whimper sliced through the tension. From a collapsed hut, a small, tawny-furred pup crawled, its hind leg twisted. The woman's defiance shattered. She dropped the spear and was at its side in an instant, her hands gentle, her murmurs soft. The strange silver dust from her skin seemed to settle on the pup's wound. And its pained panting eased. Kalen watched, his conflict a tempest. This delicate, fierce creature calming a wounded predator. This human, emanating a magic that smelled of the moon itself. His mate. A weight of duty and desire crashed onto his shoulders, heavier than any crown. Rylan approached, his eyes wide as he took in the scene. The silver dust. The way his alpha stared at the woman as if the world had just cracked open. "Kalen! The pack is gathering. We must return." Kalen's voice, when it came, was a low rumble that brooked no argument, directed at the woman. "You will come with us." She looked up, the pup cradled to her chest. "I belong to no one." "You are wrong," he said, the bond in his chest pulling taut, a hook in his soul. "You belong to the chaos you carry." "And now?" he added, the words tasting of fate and iron. "You belong to me." "What is your name?" She stood, holding the rescued pup like a shield, her chin lifted against the gale of his will. The moon dust glowed softly around her in the deepening dark. "Elara," she said, as if it were a challenge. "My name is Elara." And as his warriors formed a wary circle around them, Kaelin knew nothing would ever be the same. For the moon-dusted wolf had entered his territory, and with her, she brought not peace, but a storm that would shake the foundations of every pack, and the very heart of the Alpha who burned to claim her. The great hall of Frostfang Keep was a cavern of judgment, hewn from living stone and lined with the grim, wary faces of Kaelin's pack. Torchlight licked the ancient banners, casting dancing shadows that looked like claws. In the center of the space, Elara stood, the rescued pup, Lorcan, now sleeping in a makeshift sling against her chest. The strange silver dust, what Kaelin had started to think of as her moon dust, had faded, but a faint luminescence clung to her skin, marking her as irrevocably other. Kaelin sat on the Alpha's dais, a throne of antler and obsidian. He had clothed himself in dark leathers, but he felt more exposed than ever. Every pulse in the room echoed the frantic beat of the bond, a drum only he could hear, pulling him toward her. It was a physical ache, a madness. "She is human, Kaelin." The voice was his Aunt Anya's, the pack historian, sharp as a quill. "Her presence is an ill omen. That glitter on her skin. It is not of our world." "She saved a Frostfang pup," Rylan countered, though his tone held more duty than conviction. "She fought ironwood scavengers with their own steel." "A clever rodent is still a rodent," sneered Goran, a hulking enforcer whose loyalty was to pure strength. "The Alpha cannot be bound to a creature of dust and stories. Our allies will see it as weakness, our enemies as an opening." Elara had been silent, her storm-gray eyes cataloging each speaker, each insult, as if filing them away. But at Goran's words, she spoke, her voice clear and cutting through the murmur. "You speak of me as if I am not here. Do your wolves have no courage to address their fears directly?" A collective inhalation swept the room. Goran's face darkened, and he took a step forward, his wolf flashing in his eyes. Kaelin felt a snarl build in his own throat, a purely instinctive reaction to a threat near his mate. He stamped it down, his Alpha authority, a cold cloak. "Enough," he commanded, and the word vibrated in the stone. He kept his gaze on Elara, on the defiant line of her shoulders. "Her nature is unclear, but the attack has left us vulnerable. The moon-dusted prophecy is known to few, but the Ironwood Alpha is old enough to remember the tales. If he believes she is part of it." He let the grim possibility hang. "She stays, under my protection, and my watch." "Watch or cage, Alpha?" Elara asked, meeting his eyes across the hall. The challenge in them was a spark to tinder. Later, he found her in the high-walled garden that served as the keep's herb sanctuary. She was plucking bitterleaf, her motions efficient, ignoring the two guards posted at the archway. The pup, Lorcan, nuzzled in a basket at her feet, his tiny tail thumping at her proximity. "You are not a prisoner," Kaelin stated, coming to stand beside her. The scent of her, so close, made his blood hum. "Aren't I?" She didn't look up. "Your people fear me. Your council despises me. And you—" She finally glanced at him, and the raw connection sizzled between them. A live wire. "You look at me as if I'm a puzzle you must solve, or a wound you must seal. You are my mate." The words were torn from him, harsh and raw. "The bond does not lie. It is a law of our kind. Older than these stones. A law of your kind," she corrected softly, crushing a leaf. Its sharp scent filled the air. "I have no wolf, Kaelin. I feel no bond. I only feel the ghost of the family I lost, and the cold welcome of the one you offer." Her rejection, so calm and reasoned, was a blade twisting in the gut of the bond. His wolf raged, a torrent of possessive fury. The air around him crackled with the force of his suppressed shift. "You feel nothing?" he demanded, stepping into her space, crowding her against the stone wall. He saw her pulse leap in her throat, a betraying rhythm. "When I am near, your breath does not catch? Your skin does not warm? You feel no pull?" Her stormy eyes were wide, her lips parted. The moon dust began to shimmer faintly at her temples, a visible sign of her agitation. She was feeling it. She had to be. "I feel a storm gathering," she whispered. "I don't know if it will cleanse or destroy." He raised a hand, compelled to touch, to claim. His fingers hovered near her cheek, where the silver dust glowed. A current, like static before lightning, arced between his skin and hers. She gasped. A small, sharp sound. A howl, long and urgent, ripped through the mountain night from the western watch. It was followed by another, and another, a cascade of alarm. Rylan burst into the garden, his face etched with urgency. "Kaelin! Sentinels report movement at the Blackwater Pass." A large force. They're not hiding their scent. Kaelin's hand dropped. The world of scent and bond and tormenting desire snapped back into the ruthless clarity of war. Ironwood? Rylan's gaze flicked to Alara, heavy with meaning. They carry the stench of decayed magic. And they fly a banner we have not seen in generations. A blood-red claw gripping a crescent moon. The color drained from Aunt Anya's face as she appeared in the doorway. "The Blood Claw sect," she breathed, her voice trembling. "Fanatics. They hunt omens. They eradicate anomalies." Her terrified eyes fixed on Alara, on the now glowing moon dust that swirled around her like a miniature galaxy. "They've come for the moon-dusted wolf." In that moment, Alara was no longer just a strange woman or a disputed mate. She was the spark that had just ignited a war with a foe more terrible than any rival pack. Kaelin looked from her frightened, defiant face to the distant, echoing howls of his sentinels under siege. The claiming would have to wait. The storm had arrived. The War Council was a growling, tense beast. Maps were slammed, voices snarled over one another. The Bloodclaw sect was a myth made flesh, a fanatical order believed wiped out a century ago for their brutal purges of anything they deemed impure in the werewolf world. Their reappearance now, targeting his territory, targeting her, was a declaration of holy war. Kaelin's command cut through the chaos. "Rylan, triple the perimeter guards. Anya, I need everything you remember about their tactics. Goran, prepare the armory. They'll test our defenses before a full assault." His orders were iron, but his eyes kept finding Alara. She stood apart by the hearth, listening to everything, her hand absently stroking Lorcan's fur. The moon dust had receded, but a faint silver tracery lingered at her wrists, like veins of starlight. As the pack dispersed to their tasks, he approached her. The firelight danced in her storm-gray eyes. "You understand what this means?" he asked, his voice low. "It means I'm a target," she said flatly. "And your pack is in danger because of me. The logical solution is for me to leave." A possessive snarl vibrated in his chest. "You will not." The bond twisted. A physical pain at the thought of her out there. Alone. And hunted. They would find you. And what they do to those they consider abominations is not a quick death. "Then what is your solution, Alpha? To hide me in your dungeon? A pretty, cursed treasure?" Her words were sharp, but he heard the undercurrent of fear. "My solution," he said, stepping so close the heat of him brushed against her, "is to show them why the Frostfang line has never been broken. You are under my protection. That is an unbreakable vow." He saw the conflict in her. The stubborn need to run warring with a dawning, unwanted trust. "But you must trust me in return." "What is this?" He gestured to the silver tracery on her skin. "The moon dust. What do you know?" Alara looked away, into the flames. "I know it comes with strong emotion. Fear, anger." She paused. "Desire. I know it soothes wounds. I've always had a way with healing animals. Even wolves, the pack that raised me. They found me as a babe, abandoned in the frost with this dust shimmering around me. They called it a blessing. Others called it a curse. They hid me, loved me as their own, until the ironwood came." Her grief was a fresh, cold scent in the air. Kaelin fought the urge to pull her into his arms, to bury his face in her hair and swear vengeance. The alpha in him knew comfort could wait. Anya spoke of a prophecy. A moon-dusted wolf who would either unite the packs under a single throne or shatter them into eternal war. The Bloodclaw believes the latter. They exterminate prophecies to control the future. "I am no wolf," she whispered, anguish in the words. "Aren't you?" He caught her hand, turning her wrist. His thumb brushed the silver tracery. A jolt, electric and deep, shot through both of them. Her breath hitched. His wolf howled in triumph. The dust flared brightly under his touch. "You carry the moon within you. That makes you more wolf than any of us who merely wear its shape." Before she could respond, a scream tore through the night from the lower courtyard, not a battle cry, but a sound of pure terror. They sprinted outside. In the torchlit yard, a young she-wolf guard was on her knees, clutching her face. Around her, guards circled a writhing, shadowy mass on the ground. It was a blood-claw warrior. His neck snapped, but from his corpse oozed a thick, black vapor that stank of grave earth and bitter magic. Where it had touched the she-wolf's skin, her flesh was withering, aging decades in seconds. "Don't touch the mist!" Kaelin roared. Alara didn't hesitate. She pushed past the stunned warriors and knelt before the crying she-wolf. "Hold still," she commanded, her voice suddenly resonant. She placed her hands on the decaying patches. The moon dust erupted from her skin not as a gentle shimmer, but as a brilliant, silvery light. It flowed from her palms like liquid starfall, washing over the black decay. The vapor hissed and recoiled, dissolving into nothing. The withering stopped, reversed, the skin knitting back to its youthful vigor. A stunned silence fell. Every wolf present stared as the light faded, leaving Alara panting, pale but resolute. The she-wolf touched her own healed cheek, tears of shock and gratitude in her eyes. Goran's voice, thick with a new grudging awe, broke the quiet. Moon-dusted, Kaelin looked at his pack, seeing their expressions shift from fear and suspicion to wonder, to a dawning, fierce protectiveness. She had not just been healed, she had healed one of their own. She had fought for them. Alara stood, meeting Kaelin's gaze. In it, he saw not just defiance, but a nascent acceptance of the power she carried. And a question. The howl from the watchtower came again, closer now. Not one, but a chorus. The Bloodclaw was at their gates. Kaelin felt the shift in the air, in his pack's spirit. The threat was no longer just an external enemy, it was a crucible. He stripped off his tunic, the command leaving him in a growl that echoed off the mountainside. "Frostfang, to me." As one, his warriors began to shift, the air cracking with the sound of transforming bones. Kaelin looked at Alara, a human woman glowing with ancient power, standing amidst a sea of wolves ready to die for her. "Stay at my back," he told her, his voice raw with the promise of violence and the ferocity of his claim. "And watch what it means when an alpha defends his mate." He shifted, the magnificent black wolf bursting forth. He threw his head back and unleashed a howl that was both a challenge and a declaration to the enemy at his gates, and to the woman who now held his fate in her moon-dusted hands. The battle at the gate was a brutal, snarling poem of tooth and claw. The Bloodclaw warriors fought with a frenzied, silent fervor, their eyes blazing with zealous fire. But they had not counted on the Frostfang's fury, forged in the cold mountains and now ignited by the need to protect their own. Kaelin was a tempest of obsidian fur and fury, leading the countercharge, but his focus was split, a part of him perpetually tuned to the heartbeat he felt through the bond Alara's. She had not cowered behind the lines. Armed with a bow and arrows dipped in wolfsbane oil from the herbarium, she stood on the ramparts, her shots precise and lethal, finding the gaps in armor, saving warriors with well-placed strikes. Her moondust remained subdued, a conscious control that impressed him even amidst the chaos. When the last Bloodclaw warrior fell, their corrupt mist dissipating under the cautious application of torchfire, a grim victory settled over the keep. But it was a warning shot, not a decisive battle. Their forces had been a probe. The main host was still out there. In the aftermath, the pack's attitude toward Alara transformed. The she-wolf she had healed, Selah, became her shadow, a devoted guardian. Where wary glances once followed her, now there were nods of respect, even reverence. She had fought for them, she was theirs. This shift did not sit well with everyone. Goran, though acknowledging her power, found Kaelin in his private chambers. The pack's heart turns to her, Kaelin. It is natural. But an alpha cannot be divided. The bond. It clouds your judgment. You feel her fear as your own, her anger. It is a weakness our enemies will exploit. Is it weakness to be stronger? Kaelin shot back, pouring ale into 2 cups. I feel her courage too. Her clarity. The bond is a channel, Goran, not a chain. Then formalize it. Goran slammed his cup down. Claim her before the pack, under the full moon. Make her Luna, in truth, not just in rumor. End the doubt. Or challenge her, and be done with it. The ancient law was clear. A prospective Luna could be challenged for the right to stand beside the Alpha. It was a brutal, often bloody ritual, meant to test a mate's strength and worth. The The thought of any wolf raising a claw to Elara made Kaelin's vision bleed red. No one will challenge her. You cannot forbid it, Goron said quietly. That would undermine the very traditions you swear to uphold. If she is as strong as you believe, she does not need your protection from a fair challenge. And if she is not? He left the terrible alternative hanging. The doubt festered. That night, the Bond pulled Kaelin not to his own bed, but through the silent halls to the oldest part of the keep, the library of stone and parchment where Anya worked. He found Elara there, not with the historian, but alone, her fingers tracing the carved runes on a massive, ancient plinth. It calls to you, Kaelin said, his voice echoing softly in the vaulted space. She didn't jump. She'd sensed him. The bond, it seemed, was not entirely one-sided. These runes, they're the same as the markings on the amulet my foster mother wore. She looked at him, her eyes haunted in the candlelight. Anya told me this stone tells of the moon-dusted origin. A union 1,000 years ago, between the first Lycan Alpha and a celestial spirit of the moon. Their child carried the moon's essence within a mortal form. Kaelin moved beside her, looking at the intricate carvings, a giant wolf howling at a moon that rained silver dust upon a human figure. A legend. Is it? Elara placed her palm flat on the stone. The runes along its edge began to glow with a faint blue light. A low hum filled the room. Why do I feel like I've seen this before? In dreams. I could never remember? She pulled her hand back as if burned. The light faded. The Bloodclaw believes this power is a corruption, that the celestial line was a mistake that must be erased to keep wolf blood pure. They are madmen. Are they? She turned to him, her composure cracking for the first time, revealing a deep, weary fear. What if they're right? What if this, inside me, is a sickness? A time bomb? I could unite or shatter. Kaelin. What if my very existence here, my connection to you, is what triggers the war? He couldn't bear the distance any longer. He closed it, his hands coming up to frame her face. The contact was electric, the bond surging like a tidal wave between them. Her breath caught, her stormy eyes wide and vulnerable. Then we face it together, he growled, his forehead touching hers. You are not a sickness. You are a damn miracle, and I have waited my entire life for this storm. He felt her tremble, not with fear, but with the same desperate, clawing need that was consuming him. Her hands came up, gripping his wrists, not to push him away, but to anchor herself. The moon dust sparked to life under his touch, swirling around them in a lazy, beautiful vortex. It was in that moment of vulnerable, shimmering connection that Sayla burst into the library, her face ashen. Alpha, Luna, forgive me, but you must come to the dungeon. We captured a Bloodclaw scout alive. He's asking for her. By name. The intimacy shattered, replaced by icy dread. In the bowels of the keep, chained with cold iron, the captured scout was a wretched thing, bleeding and broken, but his eyes, when they landed on Elara, burned with a terrifying fervor. Moon-dusted, he croaked, a bloody smile on his lips. He knows you're here. He has seen you in the scrying pools. He offers you a choice. Kaelin stepped between them. Who? Our prophet. Our leader. The scout's gaze slid past Kaelin, locking on Elara. He says you are not a mistake, but a key. You can open the door to a new world, or you can die with this decaying one. He offers you sanctuary, power, your true heritage. My heritage is with the wolves who loved me, Elara said, her voice steady despite the chilling offer. The wolves who hid you. The scout spat. Who made you small? Come to the standing stones at the next full moon. Hear his truth. Or, he looked at Kaelin, malice gleaming. The Alpha of the Bloodclaw sends a more personal message. He says the challenge has already been issued, and it will be answered not by tooth and claw, but by stone and shadow. He knows your weakness, Frostfang. He knows the human heart of your mate is still human. Before anyone could react, the scout convulsed. Not from a wound, but from within. His mouth opened in a silent scream as shadows seemed to pour from his own eyes and mouth, consuming him from the inside out. In seconds, only a desiccated husk remained in the chains. The message was clear. This was not just a war of territory. It was a war for Elara's soul, and the enemy knew far more about her and about the bond, than they had imagined. The full moon was in 3 nights. At the Standing Stones, an answer would be demanded. And in the heart of Frostfang Keep, a terrible, unavoidable question now took root. To prove her place as Luna, Alara would have to face a challenge not even Kaelin could fight for her. The air in the Great Hall was thick enough to choke on. 3 days had passed, each one stretching tighter than a bowstring. The scout's message had sown a poison of doubt and fear. Whispers slithered through the keep. Was she a savior or a sacrifice? Would her presence bring glory or doom? Anya, translating more texts, had found a grim addendum to the prophecy. The moon-dusted must be affirmed by pack, by bond, and by self. 3 trials under the full moon's gaze, or the bond will fester. Turning to madness. She looked up, her aged eyes grave. The challenge. It is not just tradition. It may be a necessary rite. The bond you feel, Kaelin, it is incomplete. It must be witnessed and accepted by the pack's will, not just the moon's decree. Kaelin felt the truth of it. The connection to Alara was a wild, painful, glorious thing, but it was like a bridge half-built. He could feel her, but there was a barrier, a final door within her she could not or would not open. Alara heard the verdict with a stoic calm. She stood before him in their now shared chambers, a practical arrangement born of protection that had become an exquisite torture of proximity. So I must fight. No, Kaelin said. The word a vow. I will not allow it. You speak of me as your equal. As your Luna. She said, strapping a leather bracer to her forearm. Her movements were efficient, graceful. But you would deny me the right to prove it? To prove it to them, and to myself? That is not protection, Kaelin. That is possession. She met his gaze. If this bond is to be real, I must choose it, fully, and they must choose me. The fight left him in a rush. She was right. His wolf howled in protest, but the man, the alpha, who needed a true partner, not a protected bird, knew it. Then I will be your second. I will stand at the edge of the circle. You will stand as alpha, she corrected softly. Trusting your pack. And trusting me. The full moon rose, a massive, luminous coin in the star-strewn sky. The entire pack gathered in the sacred clearing within the keep's walls, a circle of torches illuminating the ancient, flattened stone at its center. The air crackled with tension and primal energy. Goran stepped into the circle, not as a challenger, but as the ritual's master. The trial of pack. Who here stands for the human, Alara, to be recognized as our Luna? To Kaelin's fierce pride, Selah stepped forward immediately. Then Rylan. Then a dozen more warriors, healers, and elders, those she had fought alongside, those she had healed. But not all. A significant faction, led by a stern elder named Corvus, stood silent, their disapproval a cold wall. The trial of pack is met with divided voice, Goran intoned. It passes to the trial of bond. Alpha and claimant, step forward. Kaelin and Alara walked to the center. The bond between them was a live wire, humming under the moon's gaze. The bond must be made visible, Goran said. A merging of wills. Defend each other, not with body, but with spirit. From the shadows, 2 of Corvus's followers emerged, holding braziers that billowed not smoke, but hypnotic, sweet-smelling mist, dream smoke. It was a test used for warriors, to face their deepest fears. One was directed at Kaelin, one at Alara. They would each be trapped in a waking nightmare. And only by focusing on the bond, by reaching for each other's mental presence, could they resist and find their way out. The mist enveloped Kaelin. His nightmare was immediate and visceral. Alara, lying broken at the Standing Stones, the Bloodclaw prophet laughing over her. He saw himself, too late, his pack slaughtered around him. The fear was acid in his veins. He clutched at the bond, but felt only a distant, echoing terror hers. In her own dream, Alara was back in her burning village, but this time, she saw Kaelin leading the Ironwood Raiders, his eyes cold. He turned on her, his wolf form monstrous. You see? Whispered a voice that was the Bloodclaw prophet's. He is a beast. The bond is a trick, a trap for your power. The betrayal was so profound it threatened to shatter her mind. In the clearing, their physical bodies stood rigid, faces contorted in agony. The pack watched, breathless. It's not real, Kaelin screamed into the void of his own mind, fighting the horrific images. He pushed past his own fear and poured everything down the bond, not his strength, but his truth. Memories, the shock of her defiance on their first meeting, the awe of her healing light, the relentless, terrifying need to claim and cherish her. He sent the scent of her hair, the sound of her laugh, the image of her standing fierce on the ramparts. You are my heart. You are my equal. Find me. In her nightmare, Alara felt the invasive, seductive pull of the prophet's voice, offering her answers, control, an end to the fear. But then, a warmth cut through the cold. She felt Kaelin's presence, not as the monster in her dream, but as the conflicted, powerful, fiercely loyal man. She felt the echo of his memories, saw herself through his eyes not as a fragile human, but as a force of nature. The bond wasn't a cage, it was a bridge. And he was on the other side, waiting. I choose you, she thought. With every ounce of her will, she turned her back on the prophet's whispering shade and ran toward the warmth. In the clearing, their hands found each other at the same instant. Their eyes snapped open, clear and locked. The dream smoke dissipated, repelled by the visible surge of silver light that shot from their joined hands, a tangible, brilliant manifestation of the bond. The pack gasped. The trial of bond is affirmed, Goran declared, his own doubt replaced by awe. But Corvus stepped forward, his face hard. A pretty light show, but the final trial is the trial of self. Can she command? Can she lead? Can she make the hard choice of an alpha? He gestured. 2 young wolves, a male and female, were brought forward, shivering and in chains, caught conspiring with the Bloodclaw. They were sending messages. The penalty is death. Alara's face paled. This was the true test. Mercy or justice, weakness or strength. Kaelin's jaw tightened. This was pack law. He would have to order the execution. He moved to speak, but Alara's hand on his arm stopped him. Her eyes were on the terrified young wolves, no older than she was. Why? She asked them, her voice carrying in the silent clearing. The female wept. They promised they would purify our bloodline. That the moon dusted would bring a plague. We were scared. Alara walked toward them, the moon dust stirring gently around her. She stopped before them, looking not at the pack, but into their eyes. You were scared of me. And you sought salvation from those who would slaughter your entire pack for the impurity they see in you. Her voice rose, carrying a new, undeniable authority. Fear is not a crime, but betrayal is. She turned to Kaelin, then to the pack. Death is easy. It ends their fear and our problem, but it also ends their chance to learn, to rebuild trust, to fight for the home they betrayed. I sentence them not to death, but to atonement. Their lives are forfeit to the pack. They will serve in the healing dens, tending those wounded by the very forces they aided. They will see the cost of their fear with their own hands, every day, until the pack decides their debt is paid. A murmur rippled through the crowd. It was ruthless in its own way, but it was also merciful. It was wisdom. Corvus stared. Then, slowly, he bowed his head. The trial of self is met. Goran raised his arms. By pack, by bond, and by self, she is affirmed. Let it be known. A howl went up. Not from one throat, but from all, a unified, powerful song of acceptance that shook the stones of the keep. In that moment, Alara was no longer the moon-dusted human, she was their Luna. As the celebration began to build, Kaelin pulled her into his arms, his heart so full it felt like it would break. He lowered his head, his lips a breath from hers. Now, he whispered, the promise raw and absolute in his voice. But the kiss was stolen before it could be claimed. A sentinel, bleeding from a gash on his head, stumbled into the clearing. Alpha! Luna! The western outpost, it's gone. Not attacked. Gone. The stones, the very stones, swallowed it. And a message is carved into the mountain face. The man trembled. It says, a queen needs a kingdom. Come claim your throne at the standing stones, or watch your world turn to dust. He's not waiting for us. He's started without us. The triumphant howls died in the throats of the pack. The full moon shone down, not on a celebration, but on a summons to a battlefield unlike any other. The trials were over. The war for everything had truly begun. They rode out at first light. Kaelin, Alara, and a contingent of their fiercest warriors, including Rylan, Goran, and Sela. The acceptance of the pack was a tangible force at their backs, but the looming threat was a chill no sun could warm. The standing stones were a day's hard ride away, a place of ancient power where ley lines crossed, a neutral ground sacred to all packs. As they traveled, the bond between Kaelin and Alara, now fully acknowledged, was a constant, humming awareness. They could feel each other's simmering anxiety, the thrum of readiness. They rode side by side, their knees brushing, a silent communication flowing between them. "This prophet," Alara said, her eyes scanning the darkening pine forests. "He didn't just want to kill me, he wanted to recruit me." "Why?" "Power recognizes power," Kaelin replied grimly. "The old texts say the moon-dusted could amplify a wolf's abilities tenfold, could heal mortal wounds, could even commune with the spirit of the land itself. He doesn't want to destroy a weapon, he wants to wield it. And if he can't, then he'll break it, so no one else can." By nightfall, they reached the high moor where the stones stood. The sight was eerie, magnificent. Dozen of monolithic stones, twice the height of a man, stood in a vast, perfect circle under the gibbous moon. The air here was dead silent. No insect hum, no wind. It tasted of ozone and old magic. At the center of the circle, a figure waited. He was not what Kaelin expected. He was not a hulking warrior, but a tall, slender man with silver hair that fell to his shoulders, dressed in simple gray robes. He looked almost peaceful, but his eyes, when they opened, were the color of a winter sky, pale, endless, and utterly cold. This was Malachar, the Bloodclaw prophet. Around the outer rim of the stones, his followers stood silently, hooded and still as statues. Their numbers were greater than anticipated. "Alara of the Moondust," Malachar's voice carried without seeming to rise, smooth as a glacier's slide. "And Kaelin, Alpha of the Frostfang. You came. The bond sits well on you. I can see its light from here, a pretty chain." "We came to hear you leave," Kaelin growled, stepping slightly in front of Alara. His warriors fanned out, a bristling semicircle of fur and fang. Malachar smiled, a thin, sorrowful curve of his lips. "Leave? We have only just arrived. This is the place where worlds thin, where your mate's heritage can be fully awakened." He focused on Alara, and his gaze felt like an intrusion. "You feel it, don't you? The call in your blood? This is not your home, child. You are a songbird in a cage of howls. I can teach you the symphony." "I know enough of your symphony," Alara said, her voice steady. "It's played in screams and decay, necessary dissonance in a greater harmony." Malachar sighed. "The wolf blood has grown stagnant, diluted by base instinct and territorial squabbles. The moon-dusted was meant to be a catalyst for evolution, to help us shed the beast and become something divine. But the line was hidden, cowardly. It was left to fester in mortal shells." He took a step forward. "Join me. Let me awaken what sleeps within you. Together, we will not rule packs. We will shepherd a new race." The offer hung in the silent air. It was seductive in its insanity. Answers, purpose, control over the power that had always controlled her. Kaelin felt a spike of terror through the bond not of Malachar, but of the dark allure of his words. He reached back, sending a pulse of unwavering certainty. "You are home, with me." Alara took a deep breath, the moondust shimmering to life around her, a defiant corona. "I am not a catalyst for your purity. I am a healer, a protector. My place is with my pack." Malachar's benevolent mask slipped. The cold in his eyes deepened into a void. "Then you are a weed in the garden, and you will be plucked." He raised a hand. The stones themselves began to glow with the same sickly, rune-etched light as the scout's black mist. From the shadows between the monoliths, figures emerged, but not living wolves. They were wraiths of stone and shadow, their eyes burning with pale fire, moving with unnatural, jerking grace. Earth wights, legends of corrupted land spirits. "The trial of stone and shadow," Malachar said. "You passed your little pack tests. Now face the judgment of the world you defile." Chaos erupted. The Frostfang warriors charged the spectral figures, but their claws passed through stone and shadow. The Earthwight's touches, however, lee heat and strength, leaving frostbite and despair in their wake. "They're drawn to life force, to magic," Rylan yelled, his sword doing little against a wraith. Elara understood. They were drawn to her. She was a beacon. Kaelin. The pack needs to fall back. Beyond the stones. We are not leaving you. You must. They're a distraction. He wants you all busy while he takes me. As if to prove her point, 2 Earthwights glided directly for her, ignoring the warriors harrying them. Kaelin's world narrowed to a point of fury. He shifted, his black wolf form a shadow of death, and launched himself at the nearest wight. His jaws closed on its nebulous arm, and he felt a searing cold, but his sheer physical power, and the amplified strength of his bond with Elara, actually disrupted it, the creature shrieking as it dissolved. But for every one he felled, 2 more seemed to form from the very ground. The pack was being overwhelmed, not by death, but by a creeping, sapping cold. Elara saw it all. The strategy was clear. Malachar was a spider, and they were flies in his web. Her power soothed wounds, but it could not fight an army of ghosts. Unless, she remembered the plinth in the library, the union of lichen and celestial. The bond was a channel. Kaelin was strength, will, life. She was spirit, magic, light. She stopped trying to evade the whites. She stood her ground in the center of the circle, directly between Kaelin's raging fight and Malachar's watching form. She closed her eyes, ignoring the chilling approach of the shadows. She reached not for her own fear, but deep into the bond. To Kaelin, she didn't pull his strength. She opened herself, making herself a conduit. Through me, she sent a clear, single thought. Kaelin felt it. A shift. The bond wasn't just a feeling, it was a pathway. He saw, through her senses, the world not as matter, but as flows of energy, the cold, draining hunger of the earth whites, the vibrant, roaring life of his pack. And at the center, Elara, a brilliant, silvery sun. He understood. With a final, earth-shaking roar, he broke from combat and ran to her. He didn't shield her with his body. He stood beside her. His massive wolf's head lifted to the moon. Elara placed her hands on his fur, the moon dust exploding from her in a radiant wave. But this time, it didn't just wash out from her. It flowed into Kaelin, and out from him, amplified, charged with his alpha will and her celestial power. A shockwave of pure silver energy erupted from them, a visible ring of light that expanded across the entire moor. Where it touched the earth whites, they screamed into nothingness, their corrupt forms unable to withstand the combined force of true alpha might and untainted moon magic. The light washed over the Frostfang warriors, healing their frostbite, rejuvenating their spirits. It even struck the outer ring of Bloodclaw followers, who stumbled back, their hoods thrown back to reveal faces stricken not with pain, but with a bewildered awe, as if waking from a dream. The light faded. The moor was silent again, the stones dark. The spectral army was gone. The Frostfang pack stood whole, panting but unharmed. Many of the Bloodclaw acolytes were fleeing into the night, their fanaticism broken by the display. Only Malachar remained, untouched in the center. But his calm was shattered. His pale eyes burned with a furious, covetous light. The Union, he breathed, a tremor of something like desire in his voice. The true Union, more powerful than I dreamed. He looked at them, no longer seeing a weapon to control, but a power to consume. This changes nothing. It only makes you more valuable. This is not over. He took a step back, and the shadows at the base of the tallest stone seemed to reach up and swallow him whole. He was gone. Exhaustion crashed over Elara. She would have fallen if Kaelin, shifted back to human form and catching her, hadn't held her up. He cradled her against his chest, her moon dust softly fading against his skin. "What did we just do?" she whispered, trembling. "We showed them what a united Alpha and Luna truly mean," he said, his voice thick with emotion. He looked at his pack, their faces alight with a faith deeper than any he'd ever seen. "We showed them the future." But as they turned to leave the haunted moor, a new sound reached their enhanced hearing not from the stones, but from the direction of Frostfang territory. It was the distant, frantic howl of a sentinel, a howl not of battle, but of sheer, uncomprehending terror. The message was clear. While they had been fighting shadows at the stones, a far more concrete and terrifying evil had been visited upon their home. The ride back was a nightmare fueled by dread. The sentinel's howl echoed in their minds, a sound that spoke of atrocities beyond a simple raid. When the jagged silhouette of Frostfang Keep finally came into view against the dawn sky, no comforting smoke rose from its chimneys. Only a thin, greasy, black column marred the pale morning. The gates stood open, broken inward. The scene inside was one of calculated desecration. There had been no major battle. The enemy had come like a poison in the dark. The stores were fouled, the freshwater springs choked with a vile, clotting algae. But the true horror was in the great hall. The pack members who had remained, the elderly, the very young, the caregivers, were alive. But they were changed. They stood or sat in listless silence, their eyes vacant, their wolf spirits seemingly extinguished, apathetic, unresponsive. It was a living death. In the center of the hall, spelled out in black, fungal growth on the stone floor, was a single word: sleeper. Anya, her own eyes bright with a frantic intelligence that contrasted with the stupor around her, hurried to them. "A sorcery," she rasped. "Not of the blood claw's usual decay. This is older, darker. It doesn't kill the body. It severs the connection to the wolf, to the will. It turns a warrior into a breathing husk." Kaelin knelt before a young boy who usually trailed after the warriors, begging for stories. The child stared through him. A roaring, helpless fury threatened to consume Kaelin. This was not an attack on strength, but on spirit, on the very heart of what they were. Alara moved among the afflicted, her hands glowing as she tried her healing light. The moon dust washed over them, and for a moment, their eyes would flicker, a faint recognition returning. But as soon as she moved away, the apathy reclaimed them, thicker than before. It was as if her power was a brief lamp in a vast, hungry darkness, and the darkness learned to wait it out. "It's a ward," she said, despair creeping into her voice. "A living ward. My light can pierce it, but I can't sustain it for them all. It's rooted too deep." "What do we do?" Selah asked, clutching the hand of her catatonic mother. "The source," Kaelin said, his voice a gravelly scrape of control. "Malachar said this was just the beginning. He's making his move. He doesn't want to conquer territory. He wants to break our essence, to make us ripe for his new world." He looked at Alara. A grim plan forming. "The bond. What we did at the stones. We combined our power. You were the conduit. What if I am the source?" Alara's eyes widened. "You mean a alpha command? But it's not a lack of orders, Kaelin. It's a lack of self. Not an order. A rekindling." He stood, facing the hall of his sleeping pack. "My wolf is tied to every wolf here, through the alpha bond. It's faint, different from ours, but it's a thread. What if I push my will, my wolf spirit, down those threads, and you amplify it? Not to heal their bodies, but to reignite their spirits." It was a monumental risk. It could drain them both to the point of vulnerability. It could fail, and leave them all broken. But the alternative was unthinkable. They didn't hesitate. In the center of the defiled hall, they faced each other. Kaelin shifted. Not fully, but let his wolf rise to the surface. His eyes glowing amber, canines lengthening. Alara placed her hands on his chest, over his heart. She closed her eyes, reaching for the brilliant, silvery core of her power, then channeling it not outward, but into him, into the primal, commanding flame of his alpha spirit. Kaelin felt it like a supernova in his soul. His connection to his pack, usually a background hum, became a map of dim, guttering sparks. He focused, pouring his own indomitable will, his love for his pack, his fury at their violation, his absolute refusal to let them fade down every single thread. And Alara's power, the pure light of the moon, flowed with it, acting as a conductor and an intensifier. A low growl started in his throat, building into a howl. But it was not a sound heard only by ears. It was a psychic roar, a wave of defiant identity that blasted through the hall. "Remember, you are Frostfang, you are Wolf, you are Pack. Awaken!" The black fungal writing on the floor hissed and evaporated. Throughout the hall, the sleepers jolted as if struck by lightning. Gasps, coughs, cries filled the air as their eyes cleared, their wolves rushing back into them with a painful, glorious shock. The boy Kalen had knelt before let out a small, confused whimper, then launched himself into Selah's arms. It had worked. They were weak, disoriented, but they were themselves. As the pack struggled to its collective feet, embracing, weeping, the cost became clear. Elara swayed, her moon dust utterly extinguished, her face paper white. Kalen caught her, his own strength sapped, his limbs heavy as lead. They had poured too much of themselves out. It was in that moment of exhausted victory that the true blow fell. Rylan, who had been checking the perimeter, ran in. His face a mask of horror. The eastern ridge, the one that overlooks the pass it's been mined, collapsed. And Goran, he took a patrol out that way at first light to scout. We can't reach them. The rubble is crawling with that same black fungal growth. It's moving. And we can hear howls from beneath the stone. Trapped, Goran, the gruff, loyal enforcer who had doubted, challenged, and finally accepted. Buried alive with his warriors, in a tomb seeded with dark magic. Kalen looked from Elara's exhausted face to the terrified, newly awakened pack, to the direction of the collapse where his beta and friends were dying. He was Alpha. His duty was here, to secure his wounded people. His heart was with his trapped warriors. And his soul was bound to the woman trembling with depletion in his arms. Malakar's strategy was perfect. He had divided them, drained them, and presented them with an impossible choice: save the few, or secure the many. A choice that would fracture the pack's spirit more surely than any sorcery. Kalen met Elara's eyes. In their stormy depths, he saw no hesitation, only a fierce, weary resolve that mirrored his own. The bond thrummed with a shared, agonized decision. They would not choose. They would defy the choice itself. The ridge was a nightmare landscape. A vast section of the cliff face had sheared away, a raw wound of shattered granite and dust. Veins of the pulsating black fungus crawled over the debris, throbbing as if fed by the fear and pain seeping from below. Faint, muffled howls, and the terrible scraping of claws on stone echoed from deep within the rubble pile. Kalen stood at the edge, Elara beside him, a small team of their freshest warriors at their backs. The rest of the pack fortified the keep, on high alert for another attack. Dividing their forces was a risk, but leaving their brothers to die was not an option. The fungus reacts to active magic and life force, Elara said, her voice still weak but analytical. My light earlier made it recoil, but then it adapted. It's learning. Then we don't give it a target, Kalen said, his mind racing. We go in as wolves. Pure physicality. No heightened aura. We find them, dig them out, and get back before it realizes what we're doing. He looked at her. The unspoken question hanging between them. She was drained. The moon dust was absent. I'm coming, she stated, preempting his argument. You'll need my senses down there. And if they're wounded, she picked up a fallen pine branch, hefting it like a staff. I don't need to glow to be useful. There was no time to debate. They shifted Kalen into his great black wolf, the others into their forms. Elara, in her human shape, seemed terribly small and fragile among them. She took a deep breath, and with a visible effort of will, seemed to pull her own essence tightly inward, becoming almost invisible to the magical senses. It was a different kind of strength, one of supreme control. They picked their way into the labyrinth of broken stone. The darkness was absolute, the air thick with dust, and the cloying, sweet-rot stench of the fungus. The howls were closer now, laced with pain and desperation. Kalen led, using his wolf senses to navigate, Elara's hand fisted in the fur at his shoulder. The fungal tendrils seemed to quiver as they passed but did not strike. They found Goran and 5 others in a small, air-pocketed cavern. 2 warriors were dead, crushed. Goran and 3 others were alive, but one had a leg pinned under a massive boulder, the black fungus already beginning to inch up his fur. Goran, in his human form to conserve space and air, was using his own body as a wedge to keep the rock from settling further. He was drenched in sweat and blood, his eyes blazing with stubborn fury in the gloom. Seeing Kalen, a mix of relief and shame crossed his face. Alpha, you shouldn't have come. It's a trap. The air. It's getting thinner. The fungus is consuming it. Kalen shifted back. We're getting you out. He and the other wolves set their shoulders against the rock. The strain was immense. The stone groaning. Elara scrambled to the pinned warrior, examining the fungus. It was feeding on his life force, on his pain. I can't heal him with it attached, she whispered. It will just take the energy. Then we do it the hard way. Goran grunted from his position. Shift, you idiot! He barked at the pinned wolf. Let the break reset in wolf form. It's your only chance. The wounded wolf, understanding, whined and began the painful shift. Bones cracked and re-knit at wrong angles, but as his form changed, the grip of the rock loosened slightly. At that moment, Kaelin and the others heaved with everything they had. The boulder shifted, rolling aside with a thunderous crash. The sudden movement, the surge of released pain and hope, was like a dinner bell for the fungus. The entire network of black tendrils in the cavern convulsed and lashed out, not at the wolves, but directly at the source of the most potent, complex energy in the chamber, Elara. It moved too fast. A thick vine of the stuff shot from the ceiling, wrapping around her ankle and yanking her off her feet. She screamed, not in pain, but in shock, as an immediate, icy numbness began racing up her leg. The fungus wasn't just attacking her, it was trying to assimilate her, to absorb the moon dust power at her core. Kaelin's world dissolved into red rage. He lunged, his jaws severing the vine. It sprayed a viscous, black fluid that burned like acid. But more vines snaked toward her. The trap was fully sprung. The fungus was ignoring the wolves now, wholly focused on consuming the celestial energy it had been designed to detect and nullify. Get them out! Kaelin roared to his warriors, who were dragging the freed, limping wolves toward the faint light of the entrance. He stood over Elara, a snarling, slashing barrier between her and the creeping darkness. But for every tendril he ripped apart, 2 more grew. The cavern was becoming a living, hungry throat. Elara, on the ground, felt the numbness spreading, a void that sought to swallow her light. She looked at Kaelin, fighting a hopeless, glorious battle to protect her. She saw Goran, at the tunnel entrance, shoving the last wounded warrior to safety, then turning back, not to flee, but to charge back into the dark toward his alpha. In that moment, Elara understood the prophet's true plan. It wasn't just to kill or capture her. It was to force Kaelin into a position where he would have to pour his entire being, his alpha essence, into protecting her, leaving himself utterly exposed. The fungus would feed on them both, drain the alpha and the moon-dusted, and leave the pack headless and ripe. She couldn't let that happen. The bond was a two-way street. He had poured his will into her to amplify it for the pack. Now, she had to do the opposite. As Kaelin faltered, a vine wrapping around his hind leg, Elara did not reach for her fading light. She reached for the bond, for the raw, primal, ferocious love that was the core of Kaelin's being. Not his strength, but his heart, his loyalty, his stubbornness, his devotion to his people. The feelings that made him more than just a wolf, but an alpha. She gathered the last dregs of her power and channeled that back down the bond, not as a weapon, but as a shield, a proclamation. This is who he is. This is who we are. You cannot have him. The effect was instantaneous. The fungus recoiled from Kaelin as if touched by white-hot iron. The tendrils sizzled and blackened, the psychic taste of pure, self-sacrificing love being anathema to its nature of consumption and control. Seizing the moment, Goran reached them. With a final, heaving effort, he and Kaelin grabbed Elara and dragged her back through the collapsing tunnel as the fungal mass shrieked in silent frustration behind them. They burst out into the blinding daylight, collapsing onto the scree as the entrance behind them sealed completely with a final rumble of stone and a dying pulse of black light. They were alive, bruised, burned, exhausted, but alive. Goran lay on his back, panting, looking from his alpha to the human woman who had just saved them all with something far deeper than magic. He coughed, a rough, bloody sound. "Well, Luna," he rasped, a grudging, ultimate respect in his eyes. "It seems you do know a thing or two about hard choices after all." But as they limped back toward the keep, a new horror awaited. The black column of smoke they had seen was not from the keep. It was from a pyre in the valley below. A pyre, burning the bodies of ironwood wolves. And standing between them and their home, arrayed in battle formation, was not the Bloodclaw, but a massive, unfamiliar host flying a banner of a silver tree under a red sky. A stark, proud herald rode forward. "Kaelin of Frostfang," he called. "The Silverwood Alliance has come. We saw the dark magic at play. We have driven the ironwood scavengers from your borders and purged their taint with fire." The herald's eyes settled on Elara, covered in grime, and leaning on Kaelin. His expression turned from neutrality to cold disdain. Our Alpha, Lyra, offers you an ultimatum. Surrender the abomination you call Luna, whose very presence draws this blight upon us all. Hand her over for safekeeping, or the alliance that saved your keep today will become the army that burns it tomorrow. They had survived the darkness below only to face a brighter, more politically justified knife at their throats. The war had just expanded. The Silverwood host was a wall of polished steel and stern faces, a stark contrast to the organic horror of the Bloodclaw. Their Alpha, Lyra, was a severe, majestic woman with hair the color of frost and eyes that held the weight of centuries. She met with Kaelin and Alara in the battered Great Hall, her gaze sweeping over the recovering pack with clinical detachment. My seers have long tracked the ripple of the moon-dusted prophecy, Lyra stated, her voice like ice cracking. We believed it a dormant myth. Malakar's awakening, the blights he employs, they are a direct consequence of the power inside her being active. He is a cancer, but she is the open wound. We will deal with the prophet, but the source must be contained. Contained? Kaelin's tone was dangerously quiet. She is my Luna. She has been affirmed by pack and bond. She has saved my people. Not once, but repeatedly, and in doing so, she broadcasts her presence like a beacon, Lyra countered, unmoved. Every act of light draws the shadow. My ultimatum stands. She comes with us to the Silverwood Citadel, where ancient wards can shield her signature, and where our lore keepers can study her nature, safely. You can visit, of course. The last sentence was a condescending insult. Alara stepped forward. The moondust was still absent, her power depleted, but her authority was not. I am not a specimen to be studied, Alpha Lyra, nor am I a child to be warded. I am here, with my pack. The threat is Malakar, not me. We fight him together, or we fall divided. Lyra's eyes narrowed. Sentimental human logic. You speak of pack, as if you understand it. You have no wolf. You are a vessel for a force you cannot comprehend. Your very bond, she gestured dismissively between Alara and Kaelin, is a paradox that weakens the natural order. An alpha's strength should be absolute, not filtered through a human heart. The insult to the bond was a spark to tinder. A growl rippled through the Frostfang warriors present. Kaelin felt his control slipping, the need to defend his mate, his very soul, warring with the catastrophic consequence of starting a war with the one force that could potentially help them against Malakar. It was Goran, of all people, who broke the tense silence. He limped forward, standing beside Alara. With respect, Alpha Lyra, he said, his voice carrying the rough weight of experience. I once thought as you do. I saw a human, a weakness. I was wrong. At the Standing Stones, I saw her light, and our Alpha's will turn back shadow. In the buried dark, I felt her use the bond, not to take his strength, but to shield his heart with her own. That is not a weakness. It is a weapon our enemy does not have and cannot understand. He looked at Alara, then back to Lyra. The Frostfang stands with our Luna, all of us. One by one, every Frostfang wolf in the hall, those recently awakened from the sleep, those who had fought at the stones, the caregivers, the warriors, stepped forward, forming a solid, silent wall behind Kaelin and Alara. It was the most powerful statement they could make. Lyra observed this, her icy composure unbroken, but a flicker of something calculation, perhaps surprise in her eyes. A unified pack is a formidable thing, she conceded. But unity against reason is folly. Very well. I will offer an alternative to war. Rooted in our oldest laws, she produced a smooth, moon-pale stone from her robes, the trial of the true howl. A ritual from the time of the first alphas. It does not test strength of arm, but truth of spirit, purity of lineage, and depth of connection to the wolf within. If your Luna can withstand it, her place will be recognized by Silverwood, and we will join you against the Bloodclaw. If she fails, the bond will be proven false, a glamour of prophecy, and she comes with us without further bloodshed. The terms were dire. The trial was legendary. A psychic onslaught that could break a true-born wolf's mind. For a human, it should be instant annihilation. No, Kaelin said immediately. Yes. Alara placed a hand on his arm. Her eyes were on Lyra. If this is the only way to secure an alliance and prove my place not as a weakness but as your equal, I will do it. The trial was set for that night, at the highest peak in Frostfang territory, where the moon seemed close enough to touch. The entire Silverwood host and the Frostfang pack gathered in a vast circle. In the center, on a slab of pure white quartz, lay the moon-pale stone. Alara approached it, dressed in a simple shift. She looked terrifyingly small. Kalen stood at the edge of the circle, his every muscle corded with tension, the bond a screaming alarm in his chest. Lyra began the chant, ancient words that made the air thrum. The stone glowed, and a beam of concentrated moonlight, cold and merciless, engulfed Alara. The trial of the true howl began. It was not pain, exactly. It was an unmaking. The beam stripped away layers. Alara felt her human self laid bare, her fears of inadequacy, her grief for her lost family, her terror of the power inside her. Visions assailed her. Malakar's tempting offers, the Bloodclaw's fanaticism, Lyra's cold disdain. You do not belong. You are a mistake. A glamour. She staggered, her knees buckling. In the circle, Kalen took an involuntary step forward, a snarl tearing from him, but Rylan held him back. You cannot interfere, Alpha. It will kill her if you break the ritual. The beam probed deeper, seeking her wolf, and finding none. A wave of triumphant certainty radiated from the Silverwood faction. This was it. The human had no core, but as the pressure mounted, seeking to extinguish her entirely, something within Alara resisted. Not her power, herself. The memories the beam used as weapons, they were also her anchors. Kalen's awe at her defiance, the pack's acceptance, Goron's grudging respect, Selah's devotion, the feeling of Lorcan's fur under her hand, the warmth of the bond, not as a magical chain, but as a promise. She had no wolf. But she had something else. A spirit that had been forged in love, not instinct. A will that had chosen to stay, to fight, to heal. The beam of moonlight began to change. From cold white, it filtered through her, emerging around her as that familiar, beautiful silver moon dust. But this time, it didn't just shimmer, it began to shape itself. Around her form, the dust coalesced, sculpted by the trial's own power and her indomitable will, into the phantom image of a magnificent, luminous she-wolf. A wolf of pure, condensed moonlight, howling silently up at the true moon above. A collective gasp shook the mountain. Lyra's ice-blue eyes were wide with shock. The phantom wolf was Alara's truth. Not a born wolf, but a made one. A spirit so in tune with the lunar essence, so bonded to a wolf pack, that it had earned its own form. It was the visual proof of the union the ancient stone had depicted. The moon-pale stone shattered with a sound like a ringing bell. The beam vanished. Alara collapsed to the quartz slab, the phantom wolf dissolving into a shower of harmless silver sparkles that settled over the entire assembly like a blessing. She was unconscious, breathing shallowly, but whole. The silence was absolute. Then, Lyra slowly, stiffly, went to one knee. One by one, every Silverwood wolf followed suit. It was a gesture of profound respect, of awe, of recognition. The trial of the true howl, Lyra announced, her voice thick with an emotion she could not name, is past. The moon dusted is not an abomination. She is a revelation. She lifted her head, looking at Kalen with new eyes. The Silverwood Alliance stands with Frostfang. We march on the Bloodclaw together. Victory, alliance, recognition. It was everything they needed. But as Kalen rushed to gather Alara's unconscious form into his arms, he felt it. A chilling wrongness through the bond. Her spirit was intact, but something was missing. A vital, warm, golden thread that had always been part of her presence in his soul was gone. The human heart of her, the part that loved stories and grew herbs and teased him. It was silent. The trial had not broken her. It had, in affirming her lunar nature, somehow separated it from her humanity. She had proven she was a wolf in spirit, but at what cost? Alara slept for 2 days. When she awoke in the Alpha's chambers, her eyes were different, still storm gray, but now they held the distant, luminous calm of the moon itself. She was serene, powerful, aware. She remembered everything. But when Kalen took her hand, the touch was cool. When he kissed her, she returned it with a gentle, passive affection that felt like a benediction, not a consuming fire. The bond was still there, but it had changed. It was a connection of immense power, a clear channel, But the messy, beautiful, human noise of it, the insecurity, the fierce protectiveness, the playful warmth was muted. She was Alara, the moon-dusted Luna, a figure of awe. But she was slowly ceasing to be his Alara. It was a grief more profound than any battle wound. The pack celebrated the alliance, their triumphant Luna. Silverwood warriors integrated with Frostfang. Plans were drawn to hunt Malakar to his source, a forsaken canyon deep in the northern wastes. Kalen moved through it all like a ghost, his heart in a vice. He confronted Anya in the library. The trial. What did it do? The old historian looked weary. The true howl seeks the essential self. For a werewolf, that is the wolf. For her, it found the celestial essence, and in making it manifest, it may have prioritized it. The human soul and the lunar spirit were forced into a hierarchy within her. To save herself, she had to fully become what the trial demanded proof of. The human part is not gone, Kalen. It is sleeping, perhaps buried too deep to wake. There has to be a way, he growled, desperation clawing at him. There is one legend, Anya said hesitantly, of the first union. It says the Lycan Alpha did not simply love the celestial spirit. He chose her, knowing she was different. And she chose him, forsaking an eternal, unchanging existence for a mortal, messy life. The choice itself was the final, binding ritual. It married not just their spirits, but their very natures. A choice. Not a trial imposed, but a gift given. The night before the combined forces were to march on the Bloodclaws Canyon, Kalen found Alara on the highest balcony, gazing at the moon. She glowed softly, a statue of moonlight and grace. The plans are set, she said, her voice melodic and distant. Malakar's corruption ends tomorrow. Alara, he said, the name aching on his tongue. He turned her to face him. I need you to listen. Not as Luna. Not as the moon-dusted. As the woman who told a terrified Alpha to his face that she belonged to no one. She blinked, a flicker of something familiar in the lunar depths. Kalen, I have taken so much from you, he said, his voice raw. I claimed you by right of bond. The pack claimed you by right of trial. The moon claims you by right of birth. But I never asked. He dropped to one knee before her, not as an Alpha to a Luna, but as a man to the woman who held his soul. He took her hands, which were cool in his. You once said the bond was a law of my kind. I don't want the law. I want the choice. Alara, will you have me? Not as your destined mate, but as your partner. Your equal. Your love. With all my flaws, my rage, my stubbornness, and my utterly, completely human heart that beats only for you. Will you choose this messy, dangerous, glorious life with me? Will you choose to be not just a queen, but my wife? He offered her nothing but himself. No power, no security, just a lifetime of complexity and love. For a long moment, she was silent, the moon dust swirling slowly around them. Then, a tremor went through her. A single, perfect tear, not of silver light, but of clear, salty water, traced a path down her cheek. The human tear. The distant luminescence in her eyes fractured, and the storm gray returned, churning with a tumult of emotion, love, fear, hope, warmth. The buried humanity, called forth, not by force, but by invitation. It's not a cage, she whispered, her voice her own again, trembling and real. It's a bridge, and I am forever walking toward you. She sank to her knees with him, her hands coming up to cradle his face. Yes, she breathed against his lips. 1,000 times, yes. I choose you, Kalen. I choose the mess. I choose the pack. I choose us. As their lips met, the bond did not just reignite. It transformed. It was no longer a channel of power, or a tether of fate. It became a symphony. The raw, earthy power of the Alpha and the celestial, timeless light of the moon blended perfectly with the vibrant, beating, imperfect melody of two human hearts in love. The moon dust that erupted around them was warm, golden, silver, and carried the scent of wild thyme and pine and home. The next morning, the united army stood ready. At its head stood Kalen and Alara. She wore armor over her lunar gown, a spear in her hand. She was neither just human nor just a spirit. She was both, perfectly balanced. Her love for her mate and her pack a radiant core that outshone any mere magic. They descended into the Bloodclaws Canyon, a place of twisted stone and perpetual shadow. Malakar awaited them, his power drawn from the corruption of the ley lines. The final battle was epic, a clash of light and shadow, tooth and spell. But at its critical moment, Malachar made his final move. He didn't attack the army. He targeted the bond itself, unleashing a wave of pure negation, a void meant to sever the connection between Kaelin and Alara, believing it to be their source of strength. He was wrong. As the void hit them, Kaelin and Alara didn't fight it separately. They turned into it, together. Their bond, forged now by conscious choice, was not a link to be broken. It was the fundamental truth of their existence. Kaelin's howl of defiance and Alara's song of light merged into a single, world-shaping note that did not push back the void, but filled it. With love. With choice. With pack and family and future. The void, designed to consume connection, could not withstand being stuffed full of it. It shattered. And Malachar, his power broken, was left staring at the embodiment of everything his philosophy of purity and hierarchy despised. A perfect, equal union. He was not slain by claw or light. He simply faded, his purpose extinguished, as the cleansed ley lines of the canyons sang with a healthy, vibrant power. For the first time in centuries, victory was total. Weeks later, under another full moon, Kaelin and Alara were formally wed in the stone circle, now cleansed and glowing with soft, natural light. The ceremony was attended by Frostfang, Silverwood, and emissaries from other packs, even a chastened Ironwood, all drawn by the new legend. As they exchanged vows, Kaelin did not place a crown on Alara's head. He placed a simple wreath of mountain frost flowers, the same that had been growing where they first met. She placed a band of braided leather and obsidian around his wrist. Lyra, standing as witness, bowed her head. The prophecy spoke of unity or shattering, she said. It did not foresee a third option. Transformation. That night, in their chamber, Kaelin looked at his wife, his mate, his Luna. The moon dust glowed softly on her skin as she smiled. A wholly human, mischievous smile. So, Alpha, she said, tracing the scar on his shoulder. What do we do with a peaceful kingdom? He pulled her close, his heart full and quiet for the first time in his life. We live, he whispered into her hair. The bond between them. A contented, humming warmth. We just live. And as the twin moons rose over the United Territories, the howl that went up was not one of war or challenge, but a song of home. Led by two voices that had become one, a howl of an alpha and his moon, forever chosen, forever free.